Imagine this. In 1854, a poor white farmer in Mississippi agreed to marry a heavy black woman he did not know, a woman every man on that place refused to touch. For her body, he was promised land. On their first night, when the door closed behind them, she spoke one sentence that told him why the others had run or died before him. The place was Blackwater Plantation, between cotton fields and the brown Yazoo River. On paper, it belonged to Colonel Edward Mallory. Elias Crow came up the front steps of the big house with mud on his boots and store debt hanging off his name like a chain. They sat on the veranda. Mallory spread papers, a rough lease, a list of what Elias owed, a sketch of the far field by the swamp. "You take that big gal, Mar, as your wife," the colonel said, tapping the page. "You work that bottom for me. I put it in right and you get a share. She already on my books. You get land, I get more hands born." It was no marriage in law. An enslaved woman could not sign anything. But for a man as cornered as Elias, that hand clasp felt like the last open door. They brought her from the quarters near sundown. Martha in the ledger. Mar, breeding woman in the column. Big Mar in every mouth. Bare feet, faded dress over a broad frame, shoulders that filled the kitchen doorway. A thin overseer, half drunk, said, "She bad luck. Ask the last overseer." "Oh, that's right. You can't." Aunt Celia, the oldest kitchen woman, watched Mar pass and crossed herself in a way not quite like the white folks did. "She carried too many folks in that body," Celia murmured. "That's why no man sleep easy by her side." In Mallory's book, there was a tight little note beside Mar's name. "No issue. Husband's lost." At dusk, Mallory called Elias again. No preacher, no ring. Just the colonel's palm closing over his on the porch rail. "You take her. You take that field." Down by the cabins, the enslaved made their own sign of union. A rope on the ground, an old broom. Mar did not jump. She stood a moment, then lifted one broad foot and drew a small circle in the dust around herself. Celia's lips moved in a low, old cadence. That night, they gave Elias and Mar a bed in a cabin at the edge of the place. Straw ticking, thin blanket, one tallow candle on a crate. Elias tried to joke as he shut the door, something about never thinking he would marry off the colonel's stock, but his voice died in the close, heavy air. Mar was already sitting on the edge of the bed, hands folded, eyes on the flame. When he turned toward her, she raised her head and spoke as if naming a term left out of the bargain. "You know you ain't the first they promised land for lying next to me, right?" He stopped in the half-dark, fingers frozen on his belt. Outside, frogs called from the swamp. Inside, a cold doubt moved through Elias Crow. The deal he had made reached further than his few promised acres and her silent body. What she told him next would show just how far it went. Before we follow him back into that dark little room, let me step out of the scene for a moment and talk to you directly. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? Which state? Which town? How far from Yazoo County, Mississippi, where a man once traded his future for a woman everybody else called cursed? And if stories like this matter to you, slow, uncomfortable, but honest ones, you can help keep them alive. A subscription, that little bell, a share with someone in your family who still remembers the old folks' voices. Because this isn't a tale about a big slave woman and some greedy poor white. It's about what was done with black women's bodies when cotton was king. On places like Blackwater, a woman with Mar's size meant profit on paper. More children, more hands, more value in the ledger. Planters talked about good breeders the way they talked about strong mules. Big hips, strong back, wide chest. That was investment. A woman who could work a full row in the heat and still carry a pregnancy to term was worth almost as much as the house she scrubbed. Now imagine someone like that who did not produce babies. No increase, no new names under hers. And on top of that, men assigned to her bed went missing, or lost their minds, or died. In one surviving fragment of the Blackwater ledger, next to Mar breeding woman, there's a crooked notation. No issue, 3 husbands, lost. No explanation. Just numbers that didn't add up the way a planter liked. In a letter we believe Colonel Mallory wrote to his brother in New Orleans, he grumbles, "Got me a great black cow of a woman who refuses to give me calves. Men I put to her turn strange or run off. I mean to tie one of these poor whites to her and see if that don't fix it." Years later, in a Freedmen's Bureau deposition, a former field hand asked about cruelty on Blackwater, says something the clerk marks as irrelevant superstition. "We had a big woman there, Mar. Men went in her cabin and come out wrong in the head. One white man, too." And in the 1930s, when Federal Writers Project interviewers came through the area, an old woman named Lottie May told them, "Master tried to use a big gal to raise him more slaves. Instead, she carried they hurt. Poor white man lay with her and started hollerin' like us when the lash fell." Those lines almost didn't survive. Editors cut them down, filed them under Negro folklore. But put beside Mallory's ledger and letter, they start looking less like a ghost tale and more like the outline of something the system couldn't quite explain. Now, back to that cabin. Elias is still standing by the door, belt half undone, heart thudding. Mar's eyes are steady. "They told you get extra land," she says, "if I give 'em extra babies. They ain't tell you what happened to the last 2 men who try." He forces a laugh. "Folks talk, Negro talk. I ain't afeard of stories." She lifts one broad hand, lays it flat on her belly, where an old, pale scar disappears under the fabric. First one left with his mind not right. Woke up screamin' at things he never seen. Second one left in a box. They say his heart just quit. Her voice doesn't rise. She isn't threatening him. She's stating a fact, the way you'd state a weight or a measure. "You still want that land, Mr. Crow?" The candle spits. Outside, the frogs keep shouting in the dark. Inside, a man who thought he was buying soil realizes he may have walked into a place where other people's suffering doesn't stay where it was put. To understand why sleeping beside Mar could do that to a man, we have to leave that night for a while and go back to when she was only a child on Blackwater, before she was Big Mar, before any man was promised land for her body. The year Mar was born, the night over Blackwater pressed low and wet, while old Hester bent over the pallet where Ruth labored, until a big child dropped into her hands like a rock. For a breath, there was only silence, then a rough, low sound, nothing like a thin newborn wail. Hester pressed her ear to the slick chest, felt a hard, steady beat. "She ain't gone," Hester said. "She just listenin'." The next strangeness came quieter. Other infants shrieked at the dark. Ruth's girl drank till Ruth's arms shook, then slept slack-mouthed until hurt crossed the walls. A shout from the yard, or a woman's low moan, and the baby jerked, face twisting as if someone had struck her. "Look there," Hester whispered. "She eatin' hurt already." By 10, the girl everyone called Mar was broad in the shoulders, back thick from hauling water. Children tried mocking her. The way she stared back, as if their words stuck somewhere inside, soon shut them up. Around 13, the other girls began to bleed. They traded rags in the corner. Mar waited. Nothing came. Mrs. Mallory sent for the doctor. He prodded Mar as if she were stock, then told the mistress, "It'll start. When it does, you'll have strong young ones off her." From the doorway, Hester muttered, If blood don't leave, it sit. What sit too long turn mean. In the big house, an overseer once cornered Mar between barrels. She did not cry out, only let her body turn to cold weight, as if she stepped aside and left him holding a dead thing. Not long after he began waking, shaking, seeing strange faces in the dark, women with torn dresses, men with rope bitten into their necks, and he found reasons to keep away from her. When Mallory marked her Breeden woman, he paired her with Jonah, a strong field hand. They got a corner of the quarters and a scoop more meal. At first, Jonah bragged. Then the bragging thinned. When I lie by her, he whispered, I dream folks ain't mine. Wake up with my chest hurtin' like I been whipped. One dawn he tried the swamp, hoping to outrun what came into his sleep. They caught him by the river, chained him, sold him off. In the ledger, beside Mar's name, a neat hand wrote, Husband number 1 transferred for misbehavior. The night before they took Jonah, Mar had woken clawing at her own throat. Sure, a rope burned there. Hester lit a stub of candle and saw faint dark bands around that thick neck. By morning they were gone. One evening Mar sat on the cabin step, chewing a hard crust. Her body filled the doorway. Hester eased herself down beside her. Men gon' come for you, the old woman said. White ones with papers, black ones with chains. They look at you and see more hands, more acres, more babies for this place. Mar's gaze stayed on the field. They think your flesh theirs, Hester went on. But all that hurt packing itself inside you, that don't belong to 'em. She touched Mar's arm. One day, it gon' move, and some of it gon' land where they ain't expectin'. He sat on the edge of the pallet, boots still on, fingers laced so tight his knuckles blanched. The room smelled of smoke and lard and damp cotton. Behind him, the door bar dropped with a dull thud. Somewhere outside, a whip-poor-will called. Too calm a sound for the way his heart was beating. Mar watched him like a person watches weather coming in. They tell you anything about Jonah? She asked. He cleared his throat. He ran. That's all I heard. He ran 'cause sleep wouldn't leave him alone, she said. Close his eyes. He see things never happened to him. Rope burns. Baby's cryin' that wasn't his. Woke up with bruises where he ain't been touched. Elias gave a short, brittle laugh. Dreams. Folks got dreams. She laid her big hand flat on her skirt, then slid it to the old scar dragging across her belly. Second one, Caleb. He never even got dreams. Just started waking up grabbing at his throat, like he was drowning on dry straw. One morning he didn't wake at all. He meant to tell her to stop, meant to say he didn't scare easy. Instead, he heard his own voice, thin and sharp. What's that got to do with you? They both laid right here, she said quietly. Same way you fixin' to. He stood, pacing 2 steps in that cramped room. You talkin' spooks. You want me spooked, so I back out and Mallory takes it out on you. I ain't playin' that. Suit yourself, she answered. Just don't say nobody warned you what I carry. He swore under his breath, kicked his boots off, blew out the candle. Darkness folded over them. The mattress dipped under his weight. For a while there was only the rasp of their breathing. When his hand, searching for some place to go, brushed that raised line of scar, the cabin spun. Not from whiskey. He had none in him. From something else. He smelled iron and afterbirth, heard a woman sobbing in a voice he'd never heard, a man laughing low in another room, the snap of leather on skin. His stomach lurched. He snatched his hand back as if her flesh had turned hot iron. What was that? His whisper scraped his throat. Just a piece, she said into the dark. Tiny one. He lay back, staring into nothing. Sleep, when it finally came wrong. He saw faces he did not own. Brown faces lit by firelight, mouths open on soundless cries. a girl biting a rag, while someone forced her legs apart. A boy at a post, spine striped red. A thick-necked woman with her hands on her belly, eyes like wet stone. Each time the lash fell in the dream, his own body jerked. He woke before dawn, drenched and shaking, ribs aching as if somebody had dragged a board across them. Mar was already sitting up, braiding her hair, calm as if she'd had the best night's rest of her life. "You look bad," she remarked, not unkindly. He touched his chest. No bruises, no cuts, just the echo of hurts that shouldn't have been his. I never seen those folks," he muttered. "You have now," she replied. "They stuck. That's what they do." Out in the yard, the horn blew for first light. When he stepped from the cabin, morning air felt too thin. One of the field hands glanced at his gray face and murmured, "Big Mar keep you up, Crow." Laughter rippled, nervous, then died when he flinched at a sound no one else seemed to hear. A woman's cry, far off from some year that wasn't this one. On the veranda, Mallory watched him cross the yard, shoulders stiff, eyes hollowed. The planter's fingers tapped against the ledger on his lap, his gaze flicking from Elias to the squat shape of the women's quarters, where Mar moved like a slow shadow. "That one's changin'," he said aloud to no one, voice flat. "Question is, into what?" Inside the house, a decision began to form, hard and cold as an iron bit. Word about him traveled uphill faster than cotton. By the end of the week, even the cook on the big house porch was saying, "Crow jump at shadows now." Big Mar got in his head. Hale took that to the veranda one hot afternoon, hat in his hands. "Colonel, that poor white you hitched to the big gal, he ain't right. Stops workin', says he hears screamin' when ain't nobody making a sound." Mallory's jaw flexed. "Last thing I need is another man spooked off that woman. Cost me money every time one goes soft." He thought of Jonah in chains, Caleb in a box, and the way Mar still swung her hoe steady as a mule, giving him no children, only rumors. A few days later his son arrived, dust on his coat, city on his tongue. Thomas Mallory was 22, studying medicine in New Orleans, proud of it. At supper, the colonel told him, almost as a joke, "Got me a breedin' gal here, big as a bay mare. Men that lie with her start actin' queer. One died. Now this Crow fellow claimin' he hears voices." Thomas set down his fork. Could be nervous collapse. Could be uterine disorder, and the woman causing agitation among the Negroes. Could be simple insanity in the poor white. His eyes narrowed. Either way, it's a case. Next afternoon, he had Mar brought to a small storeroom off the back hall. No audience, just him, a lamp, and Aunt Celia pretending to sweep the passage. "Take off the top," he ordered. Professional. Bored. Mar loosened her dress to the waist without a word. Her skin shone with heat and work, heavy arms roped with muscle. The long, old scar across her lower belly drew his attention. He pressed along it with cool fingertips. "Pain?" he asked. "No more than any other day," she said, staring past his shoulder. Under that stare, something in him tightened. He cleared his throat, went on, measuring her breath, listening to her chest, thumping her back as if she were livestock. In his notebook later, he would write, "Negress, extremely corpulent, otherwise sound. Men associated with her show nervous derangements. Likely credulous poor white infected by Negro superstition. Possibility of collective hysteria." In the margin, in smaller letters, disquieting sensation when touching cicatrix. Subject's eye contact induces unease. On Sunday, a traveling preacher dropped by, Reverend Josiah Kane, with a Bible worn thin and sermons thick on sin. Over dinner, Mallory mentioned, half amused, "We got a black woman here folks call Cursed. Men can't last with her." Kane's face sharpened. Devil takes special pleasure in twisting flesh meant for lawful use. Might be judgment on this place. He asked to visit the quarters. He found Mar mending a dress, light slanting through cracks in the wall. He set his palm on her head, started praying loud against unclean spirits. His voice rang steady at first, then faltered, thinning as if a rope had been slipped around his throat. Sweat rolled down his temples. Mar did not move. Outside, Aunt Celia listened, lips moving in an older kind of prayer. That night, on the veranda, 3 white men sat with a bottle between them. Planter, young medic, itinerant preacher. The air smelled of wet earth and stale tobacco. "She's a problem," Mallory said. "Costs me, stirs 'em up, gives me nothing back." Thomas tapped the glass with his fingernail. "From a scientific standpoint, I see no pathology in her. The instability's in the men, especially Crow. He's suggestible. Study him. Put him with her again. Observe his reaction. Then we'll know if it's all in his mind." Kane shifted, rubbing his thigh where a faint numbness was creeping in. "You're playing with dangerous things. But if the Lord uses this man's affliction to show the power of sin, who are we to question?" Mallory exhaled smoke, decision settling. "We'll watch him. Keep the blacks from gossiping. Crow goes back in that bed like he's meant to. If he holds, fine. If he breaks, I find another way to make that woman pay for what she's cost me." Later, in the dim of their cabin, Elias told Mar in a low rush, "They're talking about watching me, about making me prove I'm normal." She studied him, eyes tired, mouth set. "They think what runs through me is a thing they can mark down in a book," she said. "You go back in there for them. You ain't just lying with me. You lying with everything they ever did." He swallowed. "If I refuse, they take the field, the feed, maybe string me up. If I go, you know what happens." She looked away. "Then you choose which whip you take." Outside, the frogs kept up their endless call. Inside, the space between them felt like a narrow bridge over something deep and black, and both of them knew the next step could not be taken back. Mallory did not wait long. 3 evenings after the talk on the veranda, he caught Elias outside the tool shed, ledger tucked under one arm, cane under the other. "You want that backfield, Crow?" he asked, almost cordial. "Then you be a husband in more than name. I don't feed a man and his woman for him to sleep on the floor." Elias swallowed. "I've been trying. Just been tired from the work." Mallory's eyes hardened. "Don't lie to me. You go in that cabin tonight and do what's expected. I hear any more fool talk about visions and cries, I'll remember I don't owe a poor white nothing but the clothes on his back." Thomas had left that morning for New Orleans, but not before saying quietly to his father, "Watch him after. Take note if the fits return." To Thomas, it was a test, not a marriage. By the time the bell rang for lights out, Elias's hands would not stay still. The cabin felt smaller than ever, roof pressing down. Mar sat on the edge of the bed, dress already loosened, lamp burning low. "You don't have to," she said, eyes on the floor. "They ain't in here to see. They're outside, counting on it," he answered. "If I don't, they'll make an example out of me. Maybe out of you worse." She lifted her gaze. "Whatever comes through me tonight, it won't know you from them. You sure you want that inside you?" He hesitated only a moment. Then he blew out the lamp. The story does not need the details of what his hands did or did not do. What matters is what hit him when his skin met her scar. Heat first, like standing too close to an open furnace. Then sound, not from her lips, but from somewhere behind his eyes. A baby torn away. A woman begging in a tongue he did not know. A man's lungs, bursting on a rope, Every blow ever laid on that big body came rushing at him at once, his muscles seized, jaw locked. He flung back from her with no room to fall, body hammering against the wall, a harsh, animal noise tearing out of him that was and was not his own. Across the yard, old Hester, half asleep on her pallet, snapped upright, clutching her chest. "Too many," she whispered. "Too many at one time." Before anyone could reach her, she slid sideways, eyes open, breath gone. In the women's quarter, Aunt Celia heard both sounds, the thudding in Elias's cabin and the soft fall of Hester's body, and knew they belonged to the same wave. Hale barred the door with his rifle when she tried to go. "Master said leave him," he growled. "A man's business with his wife." By dawn, Elias lay on the floorboards, tongue bitten, shirt stiff with sweat. Every muscle ached, as if he'd been whipped all night, though no leather had touched him. Mar was sitting in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, chains on her ankles clinking when she shifted. He licked blood from the corner of his mouth. All that. Is that what you live with?" "Not all at once," she answered. "They come a piece at a time. Tonight they hurried." Word traveled as always. Hale told Mallory. Crow took a spell, shaken like a hound in a storm. Woman just sat there. In a letter southward, Thomas wrote, as expected, the poor white exhibits seizure-like episodes suggestible to Negro tales. The female remains physically ordinary. Phenomenon rests in his nerves, not in her womb. Nobody wrote down that old Hester died the same hour. That evening, after a hurried burial behind the cabins, Mar collected what little had been hers: a twist of dried roots, a scrap of cloth, a short length of broom handle. Hester's things. In the dark, she slid them under Elias's mattress, fingers lingering on the rough ticking. "What you doin'?" he murmured, still sore. "Trying to give what's left of her something to bite on," Mar said softly, "so it don't all go straight through you." He lay back, too worn to argue. For the first time in weeks, he slept without pictures of ropes and bloody backs. Instead, somewhere between dream and waking, he heard an old woman's voice, calm and close. "They ain't just working her flesh no more, boy. They working yours too." By morning, he would not remember the words clearly, only the weight of them. From that night on, whatever passed through Blackwater no longer stopped at Black Skin and stayed there. It had found another road into the house that owned them both. Weeks crawled after that night, but nothing on Blackwater was quite the same. Elias went back to the rows with the other men, hands on the hoe, back bent. But he moved like somebody listening for a sound no one else heard. The sky was the usual Mississippi gray-blue, the cotton white against red dirt, yet his shoulders stayed tight as if waiting for a blow. Mar grew heavier, though not just in flesh. There was a drag in the air around her, a thickness. Women said the laundry hut felt cooler when she stepped out and close when she came in, as if the room had to make space for something no eye could see. One afternoon, Josiah sliced his palm open on the rusted edge of a hoe. He yelled, blood running down his wrist. Men around him cussed, waved flies away. 2 rows over, Elias straightened, hand flying to the same place on his own arm. Skin unbroken, shirt clean, but his fingers clamped tight, knuckles white. "You cut yourself, Crow?" one of the poor whites jeered. He stared at his hand, bewildered. "No, but it grabbed me." That night in the wash house, Mar noticed a strange lightness along her own forearm, where an old, deep ache had sat for years, left from a blow nobody remembered giving. She flexed her fingers, surprised by how free they felt. Aunt Celia watched her. "That boy out there took a piece, didn't he?" Mar shrugged, eyes averted. "I didn't send it. It just found a new place." Word slipped through the quarters the way it always did. By lantern glow and over kettles, People repeated it. Josiah got cut. Crow flinch same spot. Big Mar say her arm don't hurt no more. The next time a man's back seized with the old swamp rheumatism, his wife came to Mar, wringing her hands. They say when you and that white man share a roof, some hurts move. He can sit with him? Just this once? Mar hesitated, then nodded. Bring him to the tool shed, away from their eyes. That night Elias lay on the rough boards beside the older man, nothing touching but their shoulders. The air smelled of oil and dust. Don't have to do this, Elias muttered. The man's breath rattled. You the only white one ever come near us when we groan. If you feel a little of it, maybe it don't eat me whole. They dozed and woke by turns. Toward morning the other man slept deep, face smooth for the first time in weeks. Elias rose with the dawn half-folded, gripping his lower back like he'd carried sacks all night. Mar met him by the well, studying the way he moved. That is hurt? She asked. Feels like something pulled through me, he said. Nothing touched me but the boards. She nodded slowly. They've been pouring into me so long they forgot there might be another cup. Among the cabins, a saying started to form. Children whispered it first, then adults. She the wall. He the cracks. When lashes fell or fever burned, people began to measure their nights by whether Mar or Elias was near. Sometimes it worked small and quiet. A woman with a grinding toothache sat on Mar's pallet, head in her lap. Mar hummed low, hand resting on the woman's brow. An hour later, the woman slept and, in the next cabin, Elias jerked awake with his jaw clenched so hard his ears rang. Other times the trade cut both ways. Mallory had the men lined at the post one hot day, angry over quotas. Leather whistled, bodies stiffened. Elias stood where he'd been told, near enough to keep order. At the third stroke across a boy's shoulders, Elias's own chest hitched. His breath came short. By the fifth, he had to brace against a fence post, sweat pouring, vision narrowing. You sick, Crow? A poor white hissed under his breath. Elias didn't answer. He saw the boy's skin welt and, in the same instant, felt a raw burning along his own ribs. No mark showed when he lifted his shirt that night, but the fire stayed. Mar heard about it before sundown. She found him behind the smokehouse, hunched over. They usin' you to measure how much they can give us, she said. Like watching the weather on your bones. Then why ain't they feeling it? He rasped. Why's it stuck in you and me? She looked toward the big house, dark against the evening sky. Walls keep rain out till the cracks spread, she murmured. You best learn how to stand in it without drowning. In the nights that followed, she taught him scraps old Hester had once given her. Breathe in on 4, out on 8. Whisper names of the ones whose pain was passing through. Josiah, Ruth, Samuel. So it didn't settle as his own. He stumbled over the unfamiliar words, but something in the cadence steadied him. Then came the evening when they asked more than aches and cuts. A young woman, belly still soft from a child taken too soon, lay sweating on a straw pallet. Her heart fluttered, eyes staring past the rafters. Mar sent for Elias herself. He knelt beside the bed, unsure where to place his hands. The woman's fingers sought his, small and calloused. If you take some of this, she whispered, voice thin as thread. Maybe I see my baby in peace. He wanted to pull away. Instead, he tightened his grip. It hit him like a fist inside his chest. Not a blow from outside, but something tearing loose under the breastbone. Breath vanished. For a long moment, he was sure his heart had slipped, that it would never find its beat again. Across the room, the woman's face smoothed, her shoulders unknotted. She exhaled, not in a rattle, but in a long, low sigh that sounded almost like relief. Elias sat there afterward, doubled over, fists pressed into his sternum, fighting the urge to scream. From the doorway, Aunt Celia watched both of them, lips moving. Later, when she sat with the other women, she said quietly, "Master bought him to work the field. Didn't know he was buying himself a witness." Somewhere in the big house, a different conversation was already taking shape. The overseer, talking low to Mallory about a white man who went weak when Negroes were whipped, a husband who took sick sitting by a slave woman's bed. On a place like Blackwater, a white who began to feel too much could be more dangerous than one who felt nothing at all. By late summer, word about Elias reached the big house. Mallory did not like talk. He liked figures, obedience, quiet. Yet he had seen that poor white sway when the whip fell, had watched him press a hand to his ribs as if struck himself. One evening he sat on the veranda with Thomas and Reverend Kane, ledger open. "That Crow boy's going soft," Mallory said. "Can't have a white man turning pale every time I punish a Negro. They watching him." Thomas studied the ledger. "You beat him once, and he stayed. That is not softness, Father. That is response." Kane's bad leg stretched in front of him. "You keep that woman and that man tied together, Colonel. You invite confusion. Devil walks in shared fancies." Thomas's eyes were cold, interested. "Or we stop fearing it and use it." Mallory grunted. "Use what?" "If Crow believes he feels what they feel," Thomas said, "then you have a measure. Put him by the post whenever you punish. Watch how far he bears it. If he drops early, you know his kind is weak. If he stands, you know how long theirs can be pushed and still live." Kane frowned. "You speak of weighing pain like cotton. That tempts judgment." "Discipline already rests on pain," Thomas replied. "I only suggest we read it." Mallory looked from son to preacher, then at the thin line of numbers. Cotton decided. "We'll try it," he said. "He cost me little." From then on, when men were driven to the post, a voice called, "Crow, over here." Elias was placed a few steps off, where the master could see him. The first crack of leather across another back punched the air from his lungs. His skin stayed whole, yet a hot line burned from shoulder to hip. He gripped the rail until his fingers ached. "Stand straight," the overseer hissed. "Master watchin'." He stayed upright, jaw clenched, lips moving without sound. The man at the post saw it. That night in the cabins, they whispered, "He feelin' our stripes now." They put him there to count how much we can take. Some called it payback. Others shook their heads. A white man sharing their pain was a crack in the wall, and cracks could bury everyone. When the tale reached the wash kettles, Mar's hands froze in the gray water. "They settin' him by the whip?" she asked. "Say Master wants his eyes on it," a woman answered. "Not just his eyes," Mar murmured. "They want his nerves. So when he shakes, they know how far is too far." That night she found Elias on the edge of their bed, shoulders drawn up like a man still bracing for a blow. "They holdin' you like a stick in their hand," she said. "When you tremble, they read it." "What do you want me to do?" His voice was hoarse. "If I refuse, they throw me out. Maybe hang me someplace quiet. If I stand there, I carry what they do to them in my own bones." "It ain't your bones they study," Mar said. "It's our screaming. They trying to learn how loud we can cry and not die." He pressed his palms over his ears. The yard outside was still. Inside, the cries would not stop. The breaking point came when they tied young Samuel to the post. Hunger had already hollowed him. The first stripe split his back. The second took his breath. At the third, Elias's vision swam. When the whip lifted again, his own voice burst out. "Stop!" The yard froze. Elias stumbled forward and seized the overseer's wrist. "He's done," he gasped. "You keep on. You'll kill him." A poor white had put his hand on the lash. For a heartbeat, no one moved. From the porch, Mallory's voice cut through. "Tie Crow up beside him." They dragged Elias to the post, fixed his wrists a few feet from Samuel's. Samuel's head sagged. Blood darkened the wood. Elias felt heat soaking into his own spine, as if it were his. "Give the white a few," Mallory said, "so he remembers his side of the rope." The blows that followed were counted, not wild, but to Elias it was two storms at once, his own flesh on fire, Samuel's pain driving through him like a second, deeper stripe. His knees buckled. The ropes kept him upright. Somewhere, someone sobbed. He could not tell if it was his chest or another's. Later, face down on a pallet, he felt cool cloth on torn skin. Mar moved with the tired care of someone who had dressed too many wounds. "You spoke against it," she said. "No pride, just fact." "I didn't plan to," he whispered. "It just came out." She glanced toward the dark shape of the big house. "Now they know you ain't just feeling it. You saying it out loud. That scares 'em worse than anything they ever called me." Up in his room, Mallory shifted and cursed as a sharp ache lit his lower back, the same place he had watched split on both men. "Damn damp," he muttered, pressing a hand to it. Thomas, at his desk, wrote in his small book. Crow now identifies with punished subjects. Father reports similar pains. Question remains. Woman M, source or conduit? At their next quiet meeting, the words came easier than any prayer. "As long as that woman stays here," Mallory said. "Black talk, white talk. Crow's a ruin, preacher limps, overseers in the ground. I'm losing more than I gain." Kane turned a page and murmured a verse about cutting off what offends. Thomas closed the ledger. "Then we take the root out," he said. "Sell her where no one knows her, or remove her another way. Until she is gone, this never settles." Down by the quarters, under a sky without stars, Mar sat alone on a low stool. The night pressed close. Somewhere deep inside, something tightened, as if the land itself were drawing breath, waiting for the moment the hand finally reached for her. The night they chose was hot and windless. Mallory wanted it done before first light. On the porch, he told Hale and two riders, "Chain that woman. Walk her to the road. Buyer takes her south at dawn. No noise." A house girl with the lamp heard enough. In the quarters, her whisper ran from bunk to bunk. "They taken Big Mar tonight." Some prayed, some wept. An old man said, "If she go, all that pain stay penned in us." Elias learned of it watching Hale test a chain in the shed. "About time that big sow brought in cash," Hale muttered. Cold went through Elias. He left the tools and hurried to the small cabin. Mar sat on the bed, already dressed. "They comin'?" she asked. He nodded. "Mallory selling you off. I'll speak. You ain't a man, they hear," she said. "Not for me." He dropped to his knees. "If you go, it's just them and the whip. Nothing stand between." She looked at him with something like pity, but before she spoke, the door flew open. Hale and the riders filled the frame, Reverend Kane behind them. Iron cuffs clinked. "Stand her up," Hale said. Elias stepped in front of her. "She's my wife." The rifle butt caught him across the face. He hit the floor, mouth full of blood. They fastened Mar's wrists. When they pulled, she did not fight, only set her feet as if holding the room. What came next, no two told the same. Some later said every sound stopped. Frogs, dogs, even the wind. Others swore they heard a low moan rise from under the house, like the ground itself had lungs. Elias felt his old whip scars burn. Out in the quarters, men and women grabbed for healed wounds and cried out. Hale jerked the chain. At once, he arched, hand to his shoulder, shouting as if struck. One rider dropped the lantern and clutched his head. "It's in me," he gasped. Kane's legs gave way. He slid down the wall, Bible falling from his hand. In the dim light, Mar stood in the center, chest rising fast, sweat on her face. But she did not cry out. It was as if the noise had passed through her and gone looking for other bodies. Elias raised himself on an elbow, and for a breath saw figures behind her. Backs at the post, hands bound, bellies clutched, small arms reaching. Then it was gone. Hale stumbled backward, tangled his heel in Elias's leg and went down. His skull struck the packed floor with a dull crack. When Mallory burst in, one rider shook on the ground, spit at his lips. Hale lay still. Kane clung to a chair, white and shaking. "Get that man carried off. Cover Hale," Mallory snapped. His eyes went to Mar in chains, then to Elias. "She goes in a shed, alone. Crow leaves when he can walk, and no one speaks of this beyond my land." That night in the cabins, few slept. People lay in the dark and whispered. Tonight, the hurt jumped back. In the county book, it would read only, "Overseer injured in a fall." On paper, nothing happened at Blackwater. In memory, the whole place groaned. By sunrise, Mallory had his story ready. At the big desk in the front room, he spoke slowly, while the young clerk from town scratched ink into the ledger. Overseer Hale, head injury from fall amid Negro disturbance. One white man seized by fit. Negro quarters calmed. Order restored. No mention of chains on Mar's wrists. No hint that Reverend Kane had slid to the floor, legs gone from under him. Ink has a way of stepping around what men don't want to see. Thomas Mallory, packing his medical books to return to New Orleans, opened his private notebook and wrote in small, tight script. Subject M, associated again with collective nervous episode. Several whites affected. Phenomenon not suitable for publication. Near, on fields, one phrase. Dangerous to let suffering circulate. He underlined dangerous, closed the book, and locked it in a trunk. Mar did not go south that week. The trader, hearing of Hale's collapse, made some excuse and kept his distance. Mallory, uneasy, chose another remedy. "Put her out of the cabins," he told Hale's replacement. "Separate house. Iron when she sleeps. She works the wash and the heavy kettles, nowhere near the men." They dragged her to a low shed near the edge of the yard, ringed the floor with chains. By day she hauled water and stirred steaming pots until her dress was soaked with lye and sweat. At night, she lay on rough boards, ankles linked to the wall. Voices from the quarters came to her through the slats. Songs, quiet crying, the scrape of cards. She answered with her own silence. Folks slipped her food, a scrap of tobacco, a torn hymn book page. Children dared each other to run close, then ran back whispering, her sigh still walk the field. Elias did not mend. He worked when ordered, but loud sounds made him flinch. A raised hand near any black body made his stomach twist. Some evenings, he sat alone behind the tool shed, palms pressed hard over his ears, trying to shut out what no one else heard. Mallory watched him and saw only risk. "A white man that jumps at shadows near Negroes is no good to me," he said. "Texas wants labor. Let him chase land out there." In the ledger, a neat line appeared. E. Crow, sent west to assist kin on frontier. Whether he lived to see that new soil or not, the papers never say. Much later, in a Texas family letter, someone would recall a grandfather who woke screaming about a big black woman and all the whips in the world, then laughed it off as bad drink. Hale never rose from his fall in the way Mallory wanted. For months he moved through the yard with a hand to his temple, temper shorter, words slurring, until one hot noon he dropped in, the dust beside the cotton scales. The doctor from town called it brain fever. The death line in the county book is tidy and brief. Reverend Kane limped from that night onward. He told congregations his lame leg was a thorn from the Lord to keep him humble. Alone, when cramps twisted his calves at midnight, he prayed too fast, as if afraid of what answer might come. Then came war. Mallory's sons rode off in gray. Work gangs shrank. Some enslaved people slipped away to Union lines. Others stayed because there was nowhere to go. The big house peeled. Fences sagged. In 64 or 65, fire took 2 of the old quarters and part of the main roof. When the smoke cleared, the plantation book lay on the floor, leather scorched, edges of pages fused into solid black. Whatever line once marked Mar there, if it survived at all, is stuck inside that char. When freedom finally walked up the yazoo, agents of the Freedmen's Bureau arrived with their own papers. They sat under trees and on broken porches, writing down wrongs in stiff government language. In one deposition from near the old Blackwater place, a man told an officer, "We had a heavy woman there named Mar. Men went in her house and come out not right. One poor white start feeling beatings, wasn't his. Master lock her away. She gone now." Beside that sentence, in a different hand, someone penciled, "Superstitious talk, omit." For Mar's end, the record split. Some former neighbors swore she died chained in the shed before the bluecoats came, buried at the far edge of the swamp with no marker, just a shovel of dirt and a hurried prayer. Others remembered at dusk, when 2 women unhooked her irons and walked with her toward the river trail. "We never saw her come back," one old voice told a WPA worker decades later, but sometimes the water sounded like her breath. In the Bureau's final copy, there is only, "Old woman called Mar no longer present." If you open the Yazoo County folders today, you'll find tax rolls, bond notices, land disputes. Blackwater appears as acreage and numbers. Nothing there tells you about a shed with chains on the wall or a poor white farmer who shook when other people bled. The hints live elsewhere. A half-burnt ledger, a clerk's crossed-out note, a line in a freedman's statement someone tried to erase. In the next part, we follow those scraps forward to the years when government writers went back south with typewriters and thin pay, and the people who had heard Mar's name as children finally spoke it into a microphone. When the guns fell silent and the flags changed, the stories did not. Men and women who had walked away from Blackwater carried bits of that place in their mouths. In shacks along the Yazoo, in alleys of Vicksburg and back porches in Memphis, you could sometimes hear an old voice start with, "Back on that river place." And then, if the company felt safe, we had a woman there, big as any 2, who held more hurt than 10 men. They rarely used her full name. Big Mar was enough. Children leaned closer, half eager, half afraid, as grandparents spoke of a night when the pain jumped fences. Far from Mississippi, in a small frame church rebuilt after the war, a black preacher named Silas Green jotted sermon notes in a cheap ledger. Between verses from Paul and reminders to visit the sick, he added one line, "Tell of the sister on the Yazoo who carried many sorrows in her flesh, and of the poor white who started to feel them. Make it a warning and a promise. God will not let suffering stay penned in one yard forever." Those notes ended up in a cardboard box under that church's stairwell, yellowing beside old programs and rusted nail tins. Decades later, in the 1930s, government money sent writers back into the South with clipboards and ration pencils. The Federal Writers Project wanted memories of the slave days, clean enough to print, rough enough to sound authentic. One of those interviewers, a woman from up north, sat with an aged laundress in Yazoo County who had once been a girl on Blackwater. The old woman's hands shook in her lap as she spoke. "We had Big Mar there. You ain't never seen such. Men go in her cabin and come out full of things that didn't belong to 'em. One poor white man, he start hollerin' when they whipped us, like he the one gettin' it. They said he lost his mind. I say he finally found ours." The typist back in the project office rolled her eyes at the page. In red pencil, an editor scrawled in the margin, "Too fantastic. Trim." The printed version that made it into the official volume kept a line about a very large woman and a crazy white man, and left the rest in the wastebasket. But the interviewer kept a private notebook. That night in her boarding room, she copied out the full story, adding in her own neat hand. "I cannot dismiss this as mere superstition. They speak of her as a vessel for inflicted pain, and of the white man as suddenly porous to it." That notebook went into her estate, and from there to a university basement. In the 1960s, when sit-ins and marches filled the streets, a young black scholar named Harold Jennings ordered microfilm of those same ex-slave narratives. He noticed how often a certain plantation near the Yazoo appeared, sometimes by name, sometimes as "that place by the dark water." He circled every mention of a big woman named Mar, underlined every poor white who felt like us. In a dissertation few professors bothered to read closely, he devoted a chapter to what he called the theology of shared hurt. He wrote of black bodies treated as storage for other people's violence, and of rare moments when that storage failed, spilling pain into places it was never meant to reach. As an example, he used Blackwater, citing a large enslaved woman and a marginal white farmer whose nerves betrayed the master's plan. Reviewers shrugged. Interesting, but speculative. The chapter stayed bound between hard covers in a campus library, unquoted for years. Then, in the 1980s, a descendant of the Mallory line cleared out an attic in New Orleans and turned over a stack of old medical notebooks to the State Archive. A grad student, half bored, skimmed one and saw the entry. Case: obese female slave on Yazoo property, associated with episode of simultaneous distress among multiple subjects, including whites. No proper terminology. Better left unreported. He tagged the box, filed it, and moved on. It took another generation, and the arrival of digital scanners, for someone to sit at a glowing screen and pull all those stray voices together. The clipped WPA transcript, the interviewer's private pages, Jennings's ignored chapter, Mallory's cramped Latin phrases about shared distress. On a research log, next to the words, Mar, Blackwater, poor white who felt lash, she typed a simple note to herself. It wasn't just a ghost tale. They divided the burden. A few weeks after that, an email arrived from an address in Texas, carrying a familiar surname in the signature line, and a question that would drag this story out of the archive and into a living family's kitchen. The note from Texas was brief. "My name is Helen Crow," it said. "In our family there's a story about a poor white ancestor who married a large colored woman in Mississippi for land. After that, they say he woke up at night screaming from beatings he never took. When I heard you mention a crow on Blackwater, I thought, maybe that's him. That may be as close as we ever get to Elias after Blackwater. Not a grave, not a deed, just a modern woman with his name and a question she isn't sure she wants answered. In Mississippi, a pastor from a small black church near the old plantation once told an interviewer, old folks said a big woman carried this place's pain in her flesh. When somebody in church tries to hold everybody's trouble, we joke they kin to Big Mar. We laugh, but soft." A black psychologist in Jackson, hearing the story of Mar and Elias years later, listened and said, "That's what we'd call carrying family trauma. Black women have been pushed into that role since the first ships. What's unusual here is that a poor white man got pulled into the same current and couldn't climb out. Maybe that, more than any whisper of curse, is why this case never reached the textbooks. It hints that pain never stayed behind the fences built for it. It slipped under doors and across color lines, from cabin to big house, from dark skin into light, from women's bodies into men's, refusing to remain where money wanted it to stay. Now let me speak to you. Maybe you're listening in your living room, lights low, or at a kitchen table after everyone's gone to bed. Maybe you had a grandmother everybody called the strong one, or an uncle folks mocked for feeling too much. If you want, you can set down a few plain lines about them under this video. For the platform, it will be comments. For the future, it may be proof that your people were more than numbers and dates. One evening, the researcher who followed Mar and Elias through ledgers and stray letters closed her laptop and sat in the dark. Later, she said it felt as if the mattress dipped beside her, the way it does when a heavy person sits down. Not frightening, just wait. That night, she dreamed of a large black woman in a washed-out dress, sitting on a cabin step with her hands on her knees. In the dream, the woman said, steady and plain, "Don't let them make me only a warning. Tell them I was a person." She woke with no evidence of anything, a stubborn sense of duty in its place, not to wave away voices that had been dismissed as superstition for so long. We do not know where Mar is buried, or whether Elias reached Texas, or whose faces carry their features now. We do know that a system built on other people's bodies needed their pain to stay hidden. If this story feels heavy or strange, let it rest with you tonight. Notice whose hurt you're carrying, and whose you refuse to see. For now, one name that almost vanished has been spoken clearly, in your house, into your ears. Big Mar.